Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Nancy Solari, and this is the Living Full Out Show. And today we're talking about making an impact. And how do we do that? Well, that is why we bring inspirational guests who have gone through it themselves, who have come out the other end and are able to show us the light, who are able to show us how we can verbalize what it is that we want to say. And I'm so proud and excited to bring to you today Bruce Merrin. Bruce, welcome to the show.
An honor and a privilege, and I'm your biggest fan in Las Vegas.
Oh, I hear the crowd. All I need is a crowd of one, Bruce, and that's you. Yay.
Yes.
Perfect. Hey, Bruce, there's so many great achievements and ways in which you make an impact today, every day in your life. But what I find so fascinating about you is I want to take our audience back because little teeny Bruce, boy, he grew up with a lot of chaos. Can you share with us how angry and dramatic your dad was?
I'll be happy to do it. Not happy about telling you about my dad, but we grew up in a household, and first of all, I owe everything to my mom. My mom means the world to me. My dad was a brutal, violent woman abuser. I saw my dad literally hundreds of times abuse my mom, hit my mom, throw her to the ground. As a child, I felt with no power, and I watched this brutal man just terrorize my mom, and it broke my heart.
And didn't he come to you one time, Bruce, after she had hit her head? What happened there?
Well, this was a terrible thing. We were living in Sherman Oaks, California. My dad was on his rampage again. He was beating up my mom, hitting her in the face, literally punching a woman, punching her. And then he threw her to the ground, and her face hit this coffee table with a very sharp edge. And my mom, I'm trying not to be gross, her face was bleeding and bleeding. So my dad rushed off, took her to emergency. When they come home from emergency, my dad points his finger at me and says, "Bruce, you understand clearly your mom slipped," which of course did not happen at all. I was 13 at the time. I was powerless. And I witnessed this brutality to my mom, which I'll never forget. So he was a terror and a woman abuser. And sadly, back then, the police didn't do anything, They were at our house. I can't tell you how many times, but they never did anything. But tears of sadness to witness the abuse that my mom took. I'll never, ever forget it.
Well, and Bruce, I am with you because I, too, grew up in a similar chaos, not as brutal, but, there's just no pleasure in a child calling the police on either of their parents. But there was a time, Bruce, when you grew up a bit and you were a freshman and you went home just to pick up a few things. Can you share with us that moment? Because that is the moment that you proved to your mom just how much you loved her.
Yes, and I'll tell you the story. And I was always my mom's hero. But when I was a freshman at UCLA, I was fully grown, not living at that home in Sherman Oaks. So I did show up to the home, as you had mentioned. I needed to pick up some clothes. So I walked in the door, and sure enough, there was my dad brutally beating up on my mom again. And it was like my head was boiling. I was fuming. I had witnessed for years and years the brutality to my mom. And now I'm a grown-up kid at college. So I rushed in, I separated my mom, and my dad and I started struggling. And in the case of struggling, my dad threw me through a plate glass window, and on my right arm, I proudly wear the scars on my right arm to this day, but he literally threw me through plate glass window. And
Wow.
Even though I was bleeding, I hugged my mom, and my mom kept on saying at this time, "Bruce, you're my hero, you're my hero, you're my hero." Because finally I was old enough and big enough to stand up to the brutality that I witnessed. And to this day, anybody that abuses women, they're cowards. And I have no place in my heart for any men that abuse women.
Bruce, God built you strong, and the truth is you needed that strength when you got basically, you had to go to the military. You had to go. And can you share with us about Jim?
Yes, I'll be happy. And again, I'm saying happy, but it was a very sad thing. I was drafted out of the UCLA Film School in my junior year. So I was in Vietnam, and I'll never forget, it was in April in Vietnam. We were driving in an MP Jeep. I was part of the MP Brigade, and Vietnam is a very beautiful country. So I asked the driver, wearing his MP helmet, please, let's stop the car, the Jeep. Let's get a photo of this beautiful surroundings. Right before we took the photo, I was behind the machine gun in the Jeep. So we took the photo, we got back into the Army Jeep, and Jim, my dear friend, he had been seated beside me in the Army Jeep while I was behind the machine gun. Jim said to me, Bruce, it's my turn. Let me man the machine gun. You sit down next to me. Seconds later, literally seconds later, the VC, the Viet Cong, had a huge sniper attack on us. Jim was mortally wounded. He died in my arms in the Army Jeep. He literally died in my arms. So I told the MP driver, speed off, go as fast as you can. Let's get out of here. And we got to an Army center, and people had seen this on TV, but they had green Army bags back then. And I literally saw my dear friend get zipped up in a green Army bag, and I fell on the bag, and I wept like I had never wept before, and I cried and I cried and I cried. So my friend, sadly, was mortally wounded, died in my arms, and would never be with us again.
Yeah, you know what? I'm so sorry that you went through that. And the truth is, when you got back to the USA, like they, you didn't want to go, and you had lost your best friend, and you weren't well received. And why was that?
No, all of us Vietnam veterans, keep in mind, many of the Vietnam people that were there in Vietnam, we were drafted out of colleges or wherever. So many of us, we served our country proudly, but it wasn't like we were happy to go to Vietnam. So when we got back, we landed in San Francisco. All the Vietnam vets landed in San Francisco. We kissed the ground first because we were so happy to be home. We went inside the terminal, and over 100 people surrounded us. We were wearing our Army uniforms, and they literally spit on us. I literally had spit on my face, and I had to go into the restroom to clean myself up. So that was my welcome home to the USA. Welcome home, Bruce.
Well, you know what? You were built strong, and I want everyone to stay with us because that's a lot. That's a lot to go through so young in his life. But why is he so joyful today? How is he making an impact today? Stay tuned. You don't want to miss it. It's all about living full out. Welcome back to the Living Full Out Show. My name is Nancy Solari, and today we're talking about making an impact, and we're talking with Bruce Merrin right now, and I want to jump back into our interview because there's so much good stuff to get to. Welcome back, Bruce.
My pleasure. You're my hero.
Oh, thank you.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Bruce. Bruce, thank you for sharing with us everything that you went through that was really traumatic between your dad and having to go to war, and just unimaginable pain. But when you finally got back on track, you got back to your senior year, you were back on track in terms of your career path. There was a time when you were 12. Your parents did one good thing for you. When you were 12, they took you to see Sammy Davis Jr. And why was that such an important moment in your early life?
Yeah, it was one of the most important things, and you're so sweet to bring that up. Yes, we were living in Las Vegas. Sammy Davis Jr. was performing at the Sands Hotel. They took me, I was a young kid, of course, sitting in the front row. I see Sammy Davis Jr. I'd never, ever seen a performer nearly as good as Sammy, and at the end of every show, he sings Mr. Bojangles. That was his closing number. So we went backstage. I met Sammy Davis Jr. I was in awe of this amazing entertainer. I shook his hands and I said, Mr. Davis, thanks to you, I now know that I want to work in entertainment. So, young kid at the time, but Sammy really influenced my life.
But was entertainment ready for Bruce Merrin? That's the question. Your mom gave you some more good advice. Once you had your degree and you were off and running, she told you to do what? And how did that lead you to Elvis?
Yes, and again, I owe everything to my mom. When I graduated the film school, my mom had the brilliant idea. She suggested, Bruce, why don't you try to get a job at MGM Studios? It's the most famous movie studio in the world. So a week later, I was working at MGM Studios. I had a job in the Thalberg building. That was the most prestigious building of the entire MGM studio. The president of MGM comes into my office and he says, Bruce, how would you like to have lunch in the commissary with Elvis Presley? We have a brand new MGM film called Elvis on Tour. I want you to work with Elvis and you can handle the public relations. So I went into the commissary. I sat down next to Elvis. And by the way, the most handsome guy I've ever seen in my life with that smile. And I looked at Elvis in his eyes and I say, Elvis, we're going to really get along. Both of us are mama's boys. And he loved that because, of course, he was a famous mama's boy like me. So I wound up working with Elvis in his entire career. Again, thanks to my mom.
Oh, Leona, so good. And I want to ask you, so, not everybody has friends like Johnny Carson, Michael Landon. I don't mean to be a name dropper, but they were successful in their own careers, but boy, didn't they put you on a path. What happened there?
Yeah, they really did. Michael Landon was one of my early clients. So we were at the Johnny Carson show, and at the end of the Johnny Carson show, Johnny came backstage to the dressing room with Michael Landon and me. Johnny says, Michael, Bruce, come over to my home in Malibu. I want to invite you guys to dinner. So, of course, we did that, and we arrived at his Malibu beachfront home. It was beautiful. He got out his favorite bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon. So Johnny Carson is toasting me and Michael Landon. He says, Bruce, I have a great idea. This is 53 years ago. I have an idea, Bruce. I think you should start a celebrity speakers bureau. And he said, Johnny Carson says, I'll be your first client. Michael Landon then says, Bruce, I'll be your second client. And then the next day, Ed McMahon called me up and he says, Bruce, I heard about your celebrity bureau. I'll be your third client. So 53 years ago, I'm so thankful to both Johnny Carson and Michael Landon. That's how my bureau started.
You know what? You just, when it's meant to be, it's meant to be. But I'm curious, how did Mrs. Doubtfire become your client?
Yes, Robin Williams. I met Robin because of the fact that Johnny Carson was my client. So I was at the Tonight Show all the time, and I would see Robin Williams performing, the most genius talent that I've ever seen in my life. So I became friends first with Robin. Then Robin became my client, which I loved because he was my favorite of all time. And so Bank of America called me and said, Bruce, we have a big event. I know you represent Robin Williams. Would you consider asking Robin, would he show up? A big event, 5,000 people in the audience. It would be a surprise. We're asking, would he show up as Mrs. Doubtfire? So I said, I'll be happy to ask. Gosh, I don't know what he's going to say. I called Robin Williams up. He says, Bruce, I love the idea. Let's do it. So I'm there at the Bank of America. There's like 5,000 people there. And the announcer says, everybody, we've got a special surprise. And the curtain opens up. And there's Robin Williams dressed up as Mrs. Doubtfire. And the crowd goes nuts. They knew immediately it was Robin Williams. And then Robin took off his Mrs. Doubtfire costume and did an amazing stand-up comedy routine. So I was the biggest hero in the world, but I love Robin with all my heart. And not only he was a great stand-up comedian, as an actor, oh my goodness, what an amazing actor. So I'm blessed beyond words.
Well, he was a part of your journey and you were his. And, all these great successes, Bruce, I mean, we could go on for hours talking about all the people that you've represented. But one of your greatest accomplishments are your two boys. And that to me is so special because of the way that you grew up. I mean, you were an athlete. You did track, you did baseball, you did tennis, but your dad was never there for you. And when you had your boys, you vowed to do what?
Yeah, I sure did. And you're right. My dad never showed up for any of my events. So I decided to be a Little League manager. I was the manager of 7 Little League teams in Sherman Oaks, California. And both of my sons, Adam and Josh, were on my baseball teams. And we won 3 championships in the San Fernando Valley. So being able to work with my kids, I still have at my home 7 different photos hanging in my office at home of me and my kids and these championships that we won. So it was really important to me to do that. And also, I will say, when we did talk about my mom, I had promised that I would never, ever be violent to women, and I never have.
You know what? Your dad really set the bar, right? I mean, the thing is, that should be a given, right, Bruce? But in this day and age, that was good that you vowed to be a good father, a good husband. And for you, making an impact has been so important. Why is that? Not just because you want to give back and do all that, but I mean, money isn't a big factor for you. So if money's not the factor, then what do you do all this busyness for?
Uh, the Impact Lives became my handle. It started with Dr. Wayne Dyer, who's one of my favorite motivational speaker clients of all time. I booked Dr. Dyer dozens of times. And what happened was I had booked him in Palm Beach, Florida. He got a standing ovation. He sold all of his books. And I shook Dr. Dyer's hands. I said, Dr. Dyer, you really impact my life. He then turned to me and says, Bruce, you ought to use that as a tagline, impact lives. So for years and years and years on social media, every day I put up posts about impacting lives, because I feel if there's one legacy that I want to leave for everybody, it's the fact that I have impacted their lives through what I have done, booking these amazing speakers to go out to audiences and they impact lives. So that's the gift and legacy that I want to leave, the fact that I was able to impact many lives all around the world.
Well, and impacting lives is one theme, but obviously growing up with your dad the way he was, not really being able to vocalize, to help your mom and then going, into the military and sadly seeing, Jim, pass in your arms. There's a lot of chaos, a lot of pain. But why does the concept of peace mean so much to you?
Yeah, peace means everything to me. And of course, in Spanish, it's paz, P-A-Z. The reason that peace is so important is because all the turbulent things that I went through in my life, starting with my dad and his violence, going to Vietnam and seeing my best friend killed, I was filled with so much turbulence in my early life. So now I really treasure peace, because to me, peace be with you. In my church, we shake the people's hands around me and we say, peace be with you. God bless, peace be with you. So peace is a really important part of my life, and I treasure peace every day.
Well, you have represented so many, presidents, athletes, you name it. Is there that one client that you had that honestly you feel like you made the most impact?
Well, I flashed right now when you mentioned that to me would be President Reagan. President Reagan was the very first president that I ever booked. And when you answer that question, I immediately flashed on President Reagan, because I had always admired him going back to his film career and then as the president. So when I first met President Reagan in Century City in California, I just felt like I was the most blessed guy in the world, because President Reagan had all the tools that I loved. For speakers that I booked, if they have a sense of humor and they have a great story and they touch the hearts of people, President Reagan had all of that. So I will never forget all the many, many, many bookings that I booked with President Reagan. And thanks to him, I wound up for years booking his son, Michael Reagan.
Well, and you went on to represent many other presidents. It's really been such a beautiful path that you've had, and I don't see any stop to you, Bruce. There's more to come, right?
Yes. Dad, if I want to mention, he lived to be 99. Mom lived to be 98. So I have great genes. I've never taken drugs. And so I certainly have the genes that I could live to be 98, 99. And I certainly plan to do that.
Well, I'm just thinking how amazing it is. And thank you for being a part of my journey, speaking journey as well. And Bruce, just you go out there and keep making that great impact, and just so proud to have had you on the show today. And for everybody else, when we come back, I mean, I really want you to go check out more about Bruce Merrin. I mean, so many stories we couldn't get to. But when we come back, we're going to be putting more of the focus on you and how you are going to make an impact. Leap away from today's show, doing something, taking purpose into action. We'll be back.